What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. On tonight's episode, we'll be hitting a lot of different topics, including some college basketball, where the ACC just denied a couple more schools that are trying to leave the Pac-12. We got the information on that, a couple more contract information as well. Josh Hart agreeing to an extension with the Knicks, James Harden's market completely getting shut down. Then obviously the NBA Hall of Fame class of 2023 was inducted. We'll go over the 4 players that were introduced into the Hall of Fame this year, their careers, and what led them into the Hall of Fame. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with the Christmas Day slate, the in-season tournament, and the opening night news all breaking via the NBA. So a lot of information has come out over the past week. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's been staying well in tune with everything that's going on in college basketball, because things have been getting wild. And that's where we're going to start off with tonight. ACC denies Stanford and California from joining. So obviously last episode, we completely went over the destruction of the Pac-12, everything that's going down with them. And Stanford and California are 2 of the 4 teams that have been left behind, basically, in the Pac-12. We know that all these other teams, UCLA, USC, so on and so forth, are going to be joining the Big Ten, leaving the Pac-12 behind, and the Big 12 as well. But Stanford and Cal are 2 of the 4 teams that are left, along with Washington and Oregon State. And Stanford and Cal have both tried to leave the Pac-12 and join the ACC. Now, the ACC is the Atlantic Coast Conference. Stanford and Cal, obviously 2 California schools. So that right there is a little bit of a red flag, in my opinion. I thought that was kind of interesting that they wanted to join that, but they wanted to try to stay in a Power 5 conference, and the Big 10 is already filled. They're not trying to add any more. Big 12 is already filled. They're not trying to add any more. The SEC is specifically for Southeast teams. And I don't even know if they would be looking for anybody. So the ACC is kind of like where they had to go, or the Big East. But the Big East, I think as far west as the Big East will ever go, is Creighton in Nebraska. I don't think they're trying to get any West Coast teams, but Stanford and Cal almost were able to get indicted into the ACC. The schools voted to oppose the 2 schools from transferring. So in order to be able to join the ACC, they needed 12 out of the 15 schools to vote yes for them, and they got 11 out of the 15. So they were one vote short of being allowed to join the ACC. The 4 schools that voted against them, the 2 of them joining the ACC, was North Carolina, NC State, Florida State, and Clemson. All opposed this, which was very interesting. I've got a few theories that I'll go over in a minute, but this kind of leaves Stanford and Cal in a weird situation, because the Pac-12, there's no certainty. They'll have a lot of teams this season, but starting next season, there's only 4 schools left, and people are beginning to wonder, is the Pac-12 even going to exist heading into the 24-25 season? Each day, it doesn't seem like it's going to. Each day seems like it gets pretty much worse and worse. But there are 2 other options that Stanford and Cal can now look at since they didn't join the ACC. The American Athletic Conference, who just lost a bunch of schools, Cincinnati, Houston, all of those teams that left. They could be looking for guys. They might be able to join that, or the Mountain West, which geographically would definitely make a lot of sense for them. The Mountain West is filled with Boise State and Wyoming, Montana, schools like that. And over the last couple of years, actually, the Mountain West has been pretty competitive in college basketball. San Diego State is also in the Mountain West. And that could be an interesting spot for Stanford and Cal to end up joining. I feel like that's probably their highest likelihood, if would be to join the Mountain West. But the Mountain West is not a Power 5 conference, Power 6 conference if we're talking about college basketball. Because in college football, the Big East is not considered a power conference as it is in basketball. So it's not a Power 6 conference. So Stanford and Cal will both be downgrading, obviously, but that might be the next move that they have to do. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not surprised that the ACC shot this down. there's a huge travel issue with all of this. The ACC contains schools like North Carolina and NC State, Florida State, all East Coast teams. Syracuse, and they're always pretty competitive. Miami is another one. They're always pretty competitive throughout college basketball. And Stanford and California is a huge out of the way situation to have to travel to when you're in conference play. In January, conference play begins in college basketball, where all of the games where the Albany's versus the North Carolinas aren't intact anymore. You're playing strictly against your conference unless you're in like some type of tournament or something like that. And it would just be difficult because you got student athletes that would have to travel across the country a couple times a year to play against California schools. And it's a lot because, they play every few days, each team, and, they'll have to take classes. They're going to have to do all this stuff. So there could be the possibility where, Florida State has to go play Stanford and Cal back to back. And they'll be out in California for a week and a half or something like that. And that's when the student athletes aspect kind of comes into it. And you start to wonder, how you're going to make up classes, how you're going to do this, how you're going to do that. And, there shouldn't be, for the way that college sports are put together, there should not be that much traveling. The March Madness is a completely different story. That's a tournament that's held every year, and teams get exemptions for classes, and you're expected to, if you have a good team, to be able to be gone for a couple of weeks. But that's the only time. It's going to be difficult to add a school that's all the way in California strictly because of traveling issues, I think. But a lot of people don't necessarily think that. Stanford and Cal, a lot of ACC schools thought could boost revenue for the ACC and bring in money to every ACC school's pockets. But inevitably, it ended up getting shot down. So they will not be joining the ACC. Stanford and Cal, Washington, and Oregon State are all still going to be on the prowl for a new conference starting in 24-25. And I highly expect the Mountain West to be the biggest one that ends up going after them. So that's it for the college hoops. We're going to be jumping into NBA because we got a ton of stuff going on in the NBA over the past week. First one with my Knicks. Josh Hart signed a 4-year, $81 million extension with the New York Knicks. He became eligible to sign the extension on August 1st. He opted into his player option for this upcoming season, which is about $12 million. He did that in order to negotiate a long-term deal, which both sides were interested in. So he will play under the player option this season, and then we'll have an additional 4 years on top of that. So the Knicks basically lock him up for the next 5 seasons. And Hart was one of the key players after last year's trade deadline that helped the Knicks win a playoff series. He was partly the heart and soul of the team. He's great friends with Jalen Brunson. He's a hard-nosed player, does a little bit of everything. He does a whole bunch of stuff very well. Great hustler on defense. He can hit the three. Good ball handler, good passer. He's just got a high IQ for the game, and he's a Villanova guy too. And Villanova guys always end up doing pretty well in the NBA. And they brought in Dante DiVincenzo as well. So they got Brunson, DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart. All they're missing is Michael Bridges to fill out the rest of their Villanova squad. But yeah, Josh Hart signs the 4-year extension for about $20 million a year. And with the amount of money that's been given out this offseason, it's not that high of a contract. $20 million is not the $20 million that it was 10 years ago. So we got to look past that. I mean, Jaylen Brown's going to be making $61 million a year for the next 5 years. So this is a third of that. $20 million is not nearly the same amount of money that it used to be. So it's a pretty inexpensive contract with the way that the salary cap has gone up. Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson are both on extremely team-friendly contracts as well. Jalen Brunson's making just just slightly more than what Josh Hart will be making. And he's the best player on the team and arguably one of the up and coming best players in the NBA as well. He's becoming a phenom before our eyes, but he's getting paid about 25, 26 a year. Julius Randle's getting paid right around that, I think 24-ish a year. And then Josh Hart getting paid 20 a year. When you got teams who have 3+ guys who are making over $30 million. So the Knicks continue to spend their money wisely. I'm very pleased with what they're doing, starting to build a contender. And Josh Hart extension had to happen. He was the heart and soul of the team in the second half of the season, and he was a very, very important player. Now, with the Obi Toppin traded as well, the only guy that they haven't locked up yet is Emmanuel Quickley. So with Josh Hart getting $20 million a year, the question rings how much Emmanuel Quickley will get. People think he's going to get right around that much money. The Knicks have had some extension talks with Quickley, who could be a restricted free agent after this upcoming season. But there's nothing that's close to being done. They think that now, since Hart has finished, his deal has been officially done, that they'll start talking to Quickley soon. It seems like they have every intention to try to re-sign Emmanuel Quickley to a 3 or 4 year contract as well. Right around $20 million probably would be the goal to end up getting him for. So Josh Hart heading back to the Knicks. And then also we got a star player who has been in the news a ton recently, James Harden, and the nonstop drama that is the Philadelphia 76ers and James Harden. News came out just a couple of days ago that Daryl Morey and the Philadelphia 76ers have stopped all talks of a James Harden trade. They were obviously, Harden opted into his player option for this upcoming season, and shortly after doing that, he requested a trade from the Philadelphia 76ers, which kind of left a lot of people scratching their head. You heard at the beginning of the offseason he was going to opt into his player option because he wanted to run it back with the Sixers, and he also wanted to try to agree on a long-term deal with the Sixers. Well, the news that came out that Harden is claiming that he wanted a max deal from the 76ers, and he agreed to sign the player option thinking that he would get a max extension for 4 or 5 years and probably around $60 million a year, like what Jaylen Brown got. And Morey and the Sixers were not willing to give him that. And that could possibly be the reason why he requested a trade. He was what's basically come out is that he's trying to claim that he was duped into it, basically. He signed the $35.6 million player option thinking that he would get a long-term deal out of it, and they just weren't willing to give him that. So he'll be playing on the $35.6 million player option. He requested a trade, and Morey and the Sixers have came out and said that they're not even shopping him anymore. He will report to training camp. He's expected to report to training camp. Not sure if he's going to, but he's expected to report to training camp. And obviously, if he decides to sit out and miss training camp, miss preseason games, and possibly even miss regular season games, it'll hurt the amount of money that he ends up coming away with. He'll end up getting docked in pay, and that $35.6 million will not be the same that he's expected to get. So the best thing, it's crazy because this is what happens when a lot of these guys just go from team to team and keep requesting trades. You can do it like once or so. If, like in Damian Lillard's situation, he spent 10 years with the Portland Trailblazers. He was so willing to stick with them through it all. He only wanted to win with them. And it started to hit him. He's 33 years old, and the back end of his career is slowly creeping up. And this Trailblazers team does not look like they're going to be able to compete anytime soon. So he finally decided to request a trade. I'm not sure the way he's going about it is great by just saying he only wants to go to the Miami Heat. I think that's a little bit excessive, and it's going to make him getting traded a lot more difficult. But then you got a guy like James Harden who played for OKC, got traded to the Rockets, and made his name on the Rockets, became an MVP, made it to the Western Conference Finals, made a big duo with Chris Paul, and then they traded away Chris Paul, and enough was enough. He showed up training camp overweight, and he ended up getting traded to the Brooklyn Nets. And then he spent some time with the Brooklyn Nets, got fed up with Kyrie and KD, and requested a trade out of the Brooklyn Nets. And then he went to the 76ers, and now he's requesting a trade out of the 76ers. This is the third team that he's played for in his career, and he's requested a trade out of all three of the teams. So when it gets to that point, you're under contract, teams are going to stop caring. Like, they're really going to stop caring. Worst comes, the 76ers are only going to trade James Harden if they can get a lot for him. And with teams knowing that he could easily turn around and request a trade at any point, teams are going to be reluctant to even trade for him. So the best bet the 76ers have is, we're paying you $35.6 million. You better play this season. And if you decide to sit out, then that's less than that number keeps going down and down and down. So pretty much the amount of trade demands that he has given throughout his career is coming back to bite him. They're not taking it seriously anymore, and I'm not surprised about it. This is kind of what happens. And, we're seeing the same thing happen with Kyrie Irving. He ended up getting an extension with the Dallas Mavericks, but we'll see if he even plays out the rest of that contract. He signed a 3-year extension with them. He could very well get frustrated halfway through this upcoming season and be like, no, I don't want to play here anymore. You never have any idea what's going on with Kyrie Irving. So James Harden is the exact same situation. Kevin Durant became the exact same situation too. Leaving OKC to go to Golden State, and then got a little bit fed up with the way that things were being dealt with in Golden State, went to sign with the Nets, then eventually demanded a trade away from the Nets. They forced him to play for a little bit, and then they traded him to the Suns. And it looks like he's content right now with the Suns, but you never know when that's going to turn, basically. So things got a lot more interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Harden goes about this. Does he show up to training camp fat again, like he did when he was on the Houston Rockets right before they traded him to the Nets, and then he quickly slimmed down, showed up out of weight. It'll be interesting to see if he does that again. I think the mature thing at this point is play out the season. You've got a good team with the Sixers. They were close last year. If you decide to go all in and play, you got Embiid, who just won MVP. You could be competitive in the Eastern Conference. Are they, the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference? I don't think so. But they do have a good team. If he's fully healthy and he decides to play, try to run it back with the Sixers. Why not? Just do it. And then you hit unrestricted free agency next year. If you have a big season, then you could end up signing that max contract with somebody else. You just go for it. I don't understand what the downside of that would be, what the upside of him just sitting out again would be, when it just makes him look more like an unreliable player. So making things very interesting. Daryl Morey and the Sixers, they're not putting up with it. Enough is enough, and the ball's in his court, figuratively, and realistically as well. They want him to play, and we'll find out if that's actually what happens. So Harden is in a bit of a standstill, but jumping over from that to some league-wide news, the NBA Hall of Fame class of 2023 was officially inducted into the Hall of Fame this past weekend. There was a bunch of big names that got inducted into this class. The 4 NBA players that got inducted were Dwayne Wade, Tony Parker, Dirk Nowitzki, and Pau Gasol. Greg Popovich was also inducted into the Hall of Fame as a head coach, and Becky Hammon was also inducted into the Hall of Fame as a WNBA player. There was also some other guys that got inducted, some referees. There's a variety, some international players like they do every year, but these are the mainstays of the American basketball that got inducted pretty much into the Hall of Fame. So the top guy, Dwayne Wade and Dirk, can be seen as the big names that decided to make it. But Dwayne Wade was probably the biggest name that made it. He got presented by Allen Iverson, who was the class of 2016. I haven't watched the entirety of each of the speeches yet, but I'm definitely going to be looking at that because Dwayne Wade had a very interesting speech. He thanked Allen Iverson a lot for kind of molding him into the player that he became. That's why he wore number 3 throughout his career, was because of Allen Iverson. And he wanted Iverson to present him, so Iverson did. And then obviously Dwayne Wade, many accolades. He was a 3-time champion, won the NBA Finals in 2006 alongside Shaq, and then alongside LeBron in 2012 and 13. Was also a 13-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA. He was a scoring champion in 2009 and played for the Heat from 2003 to 2016 and again in 18-19, and then had 2 quick stops with the Bulls and the Cavs. Is one of the best shot blocking guards of all time, one of the best defensive guards of all time. He averaged 0.8 blocks a game for his career, while averaging 22 points a game, 5.4 assists, 4.7 rebounds for his entire career. His playoff career, he played in 177 games, averaged 22.3 points, 5.2 boards, 4.9 assists, and 1 block per game as well. But most notably, his biggest claim to fame was early in his career during the 2006 NBA Finals. The Miami Heat ended up winning their first NBA Finals in 2006. They beat the Dallas Mavericks, which was the first time that Dirk made it to the finals as well. They were able to beat them, though, and it was capped off by Dwayne Wade's incredible performance throughout that playoff run. He averaged 28.4 points a game in that playoff run, 2.2 steals in 23 games, and was by far the star of the team. He won the Finals MVP, and that was the one Finals MVP he won in the 3 finals that he ended up getting. LeBron won the other 2 while he was there. And then Tony Parker was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Tony Parker obviously was the point guard for those long, dominant Spurs teams that won 5 championships. He won 4 championships. He was not on the original, the first team that ended up being the Knicks in '99. Only David Robinson and Tim Duncan were on that team. But he was presented by Manu Ginobili, who was also a Spurs teammate with him, who got inducted in 2022. And then Tim Duncan, who one of the best players of all time, got inducted in 2020. He won 4 championships with both of those guys. He was a 6-time All-Star. He won Finals MVP in 2007, and he was a 4-time All-NBA. And he played almost his entire career for the Spurs, 2001 to 2018. He played his final season with the Charlotte Hornets when the Spurs were clearly going into a little bit of a rebuild, and the Hornets kind of gave him more money than the Spurs were willing to give him. So he came off the bench for the Hornets in the 18-19 season, but decided to hang it up. All these guys who got inducted, this was their first year of eligibility. They all finished their careers after the 2018-19 season. Gasol, Nowitzki, Wade, and Tony Parker all retired after the 19 season. So this was the first ballot for all of these guys. They don't really do a whole ballot system in the NBA in the Basketball Hall of Fame like they do in the Baseball Hall of Fame, where you get a certain amount of ballots and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much, if you're a Hall of Famer, you'll get voted in like as soon as possible. You know, when you look at the numbers that Tony Parker and Pau Gasol put up, they're probably not the first ballot Hall of Famers. There probably are Hall of Famers, but they usually wouldn't be first ballots. Dirk and Dwayne Wade definitely would be. They were generational talents, but they do it a little bit differently. And this was the first year eligible for these guys, and also of what Tony Parker, Dirk, and Pau Gasol did overseas too is a big thing that kind of went into it. The Basketball Hall of Fame is for both the NBA, but it's also for every other international league and so on. So Tony Parker averaged 15.5 points a game for his career, 5.6 assists, and shot 32% from 3. In the playoffs, though, he played some of his best basketball, played 226 career games in the playoffs that he played for the Spurs dynasty throughout those 20 years or so where they were in the playoffs, deep in the playoffs pretty much every single year. He averaged 17.9 points a game, 5.1 assists, 2.9 rebounds. He won the 2007 Finals MVP, and during that Finals run, he he played in 20 games, averaged 20.8 points and 5.8 assists. So Tony Parker was kind of the sidekick to Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was the star of the team. Parker and Ginobili were kind of like the sidekicks, the two other star players, but all three of them are now in the Hall of Fame. And then Dirk Nowitzki, of course, one of the best international players to ever play the game, was a generational type scorer. He was presented in the Hall of Fame by Jason Kidd and Steve Nash. Both were teammates of his with the Dallas Mavericks. Both were inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. Dirk won the NBA Finals in 2011 when they shocked the stacked Miami Heat team. The first year that LeBron teamed up with Bosh and D Wade in the Miami Heat, the Mavs picked them off in the playoffs. So Dirk was able to get his one and only ring. He won Finals MVP that year. He also won a league MVP in 2007. Was a 14-time All-Star, 12-time All-NBA. Played his entire career for the Dallas Mavericks from 1998 to 2019. Averaged 20.7 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists, and shot 38% from three for his career. He's sixth all-time in scoring with 31,560 career points. The only five guys that he's behind all-time in scoring are LeBron, Kareem, Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan. So goes to show you the kind of generational scorer that he was. He played some of his best basketball too in the playoffs, played 145 career games in the playoffs, averaged 25.3 points, 10 rebounds, and shot 37% from three. His best run throughout a playoff was not 2011 when he won the NBA Finals, but 2006 when he led the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals where they lost to Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat. But the 2006 Western Conference champions, he played in 23 games in that playoffs, in the 2006 playoffs. He averaged 27 points and 11.7 rebounds. He absolutely went off, put that team on his back. And they were not able to get past Shaq and D Wade in the Heat, which was a very stacked team. They had Gary Payton on that team as well. Alonzo Mourning. They had a lot of really good players. Those guys were at the end of their careers, but still, they had a lot of really good guys. And you can argue Shaq was still in his prime. That was right after he left, after him and Kobe had that falling out. So I think that was his second year in Miami. I think 03-04 was his last year with the Lakers. 04-05 was his first year with the Heat. And then he won the championship in the 05-06 season with a young Dwayne Wade. So very, very great career, obviously, for Dirk Nowitzki. One of the best scorers all around throughout his entire career. And then the final NBA player that got inducted was Pau Gasol. So Pau Gasol, also one of the best international guys to ever play the game. He was presented by Tony Kukoc, who was inducted in 2021, played for Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls back in the 90s, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was a guy that he kind of molded his game after, one of the best players to ever play, inducted in 1995. Gasol was a two-time champion. He was Kobe Bryant's sidekick for those two championship teams that won back-to-back in 2009 and 2010. He was also a six-time All-Star, four-time All-NBA, one Rookie of the Year in the 01-02 season. He played the majority of his career for the Memphis Grizzlies, the Vancouver Grizzlies turned Memphis Grizzlies from 2001 to 2008. Then he played for the Lakers, where he was most remembered. His number is now retired with the Lakers from 2008 to 2014. And then he played for the Bulls, Spurs, and Bucks for the last little bit of his career and retired in the 2018-19 season. He averaged 17 points, 9.2 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks for his career. For the playoffs, he averaged 15.4 points and also 9.2 rebounds. His biggest claim to fame was the two finals runs that he had alongside Kobe. Kobe obviously won the three-peat back with the Lakers when Shaq was around, but he stuck it out with the Lakers after Shaq left, and it took him several years, but he was able to win two on his own back-to-back. He beat the Boston Celtics, and then he beat the Orlando Magic in those NBA Finals, and Pau Gasol was his sidekick. Gasol had a tremendous finals playoff run in those two seasons. In the 2009 playoffs, he played 23 games, averaged 18.3 points, 10.8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 58% from the field. And then in the 2010 playoffs, he also played 23 games, averaged 19.6 points, 11.1 rebounds, 2.1 blocks, and 53.9% from the field. So that was his big claim to fame, was those 2 back-to-back championships, the only 2 championships that he won in his career. But he put up better than his career numbers in those playoff runs as well. So he was a key piece. Kobe ended up winning both of those finals MVPs, obviously, but that team would not have won either of those NBA finals, I don't think, if Pau Gasol was not on the team. He was the perfect additional piece next to Kobe in order to be so dominant. And then so those 4 guys were all inducted into the Hall of Fame. So congratulations to those 4 guys. 4 of the best players of my generation. I grew up watching all 4 of those guys and absolutely loved them. It wasn't even too long that they retired. 2019. It's crazy that they're already in the Hall of Fame. I grew up as a huge Dirk Nowitzki fan. He was my favorite player when I was a little kid, and all throughout his career, I followed him all throughout his career. So it was very cool to me to see him making it to the finally making it to the Basketball Hall of Fame. And then obviously Greg Popovich was the head coach of the Spurs, still is the head coach of the Spurs, but was the head coach of the Spurs throughout their entire dynasty from the late 90s into the 2010s. He won 5 NBA titles, still with the San Antonio Spurs, obviously. He's got 5 and counting. Now they have Victor Wembanyama, so we have no idea if a second Spurs dynasty is just beginning, but we'll have to see about that. And then Becky Hammon, who was one of the best WNBA players of all time, actually hired by Greg Popovich as an assistant coach, and has gotten several NBA interviews to be a head coach, but hasn't gotten a head coaching job just yet. But she was inducted into the Hall of Fame as well. So congratulations to those 6 and to all the other guys that were inducted into the Hall of Fame for the class of 2023. And to round things out for tonight's episode, the NBA put out a lot of information this past week about a variety of different things. They released the Christmas Day schedule, a little bit more information about the in-season tournament that's going to take place this year, starting this year, that Adam Silver implemented, and also the opening night games. They revealed some information. So first for opening night, Lakers, Nuggets, and Suns versus Warriors are going to tip off the entire NBA season. They didn't give a specific date yet, but you can expect it'll be in mid-October, where the season normally starts. And those 2 games will start the NBA season. The Denver Nuggets are the reigning NBA champions. It'll be their banner night. It's Lakers at Nuggets. So LeBron will be there to watch Denver raise up their 2023 NBA Finals banner, the first one in franchise history. They'll all get their rings as well. All of the returning players, at least. Once the Pacers come to town, Bruce Brown will be able to get his ring and so on. But all the returning guys will be able to get their rings and stuff. They'll have plenty of the ceremony. And then after that, Suns versus Warriors will be the other game that goes down that night. So we'll see hopefully a healthy Durant, a healthy Chris Paul, and healthy Devin Booker taking on not Chris Paul, a healthy Kevin Durant, healthy DeAndre Ayton, and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal for the Suns. And then Chris Paul, this will be his first game as a Golden State Warrior, and what better way for him to start his Warriors career than against the team that traded him, the Phoenix Suns. So it'll be a very, very interesting opening night. I'm excited for it. It'll be at Golden State. If it was in Phoenix, I think it would have been a little bit more interesting, getting to see the kind of ovation and reaction that Chris Paul were to get by the Phoenix fans. I mean, he didn't really do anything to abandon the team, so I would hope that he would get cheered for, but you never know. And then that's the opening night slate. The Christmas Day slate has also been announced at 12 o'clock, as they always do. The Knicks will be on. At noon, the Milwaukee Bucks will be playing at the New York Knicks. At noon, 2:30 will be the Philadelphia 76ers at the Miami Heat. At 5 o'clock will be the Boston Celtics at the Los Angeles Lakers. So a classic rivalry matchup there for Christmas Day 2023 will be Celtics-Lakers. Then at 7:30, the Mavericks will be at the Phoenix Suns. And then rounding out the night at 10 o'clock will be the Golden State Warriors taking on the Denver Nuggets. So opening night will be Suns, Warriors, Lakers, Nuggets. Christmas Day will be Warriors at Nuggets. So all 5 of those games should be tremendous games. I mean, all five of those games, all 10 of those teams should be deep in a playoff push throughout the entire season this upcoming year. They all should be atop their conferences. So it should be some very very interesting games. I'm excited to see it. The Knicks, as they seem to always do, get the noontime game, get to start off um, the entire Christmas Day slate, and it'll be at the Garden as it almost always is. The Knicks always, you can always pretty much guarantee that the Knicks will be playing on Christmas Day at the Garden at noon. That's just year after year. That's what seems to happen. Except those couple of years that they didn't even get a Christmas Day game because their team was that bad. I was not completely against that. So that'll be the Christmas Day slate. And then the in-season tournament. So we got a little bit more information about just exactly how this in-season tournament is going to work. The in-season tournament is going to begin on November 3rd with the first of 7 tournament nights. I don't know exactly what 7 tournament nights means, but we're going to be getting some more clarification about that. This has all been reported on CBS Sports by James Herbert, who's a basketball analyst for them. The group stage will continue on November 10th, November 14th, 17th, 21st, 24th, and 28th. In other words, it'll be every Tuesday and Friday night of November, with the exception of November 7th, which is the election day. So nobody will play that day. But every Tuesday and Friday night, there will be games for this in-season tournament. I don't know exactly what that means, what the group stage means, if there'll be games on other days, or are we just getting NBA games only on those 2 days? I think that there has to be a lot of clarification that needs to be brought up. We will get some clarification this week, though, as I'll tell you in a minute. How it's going to work is there's going to be 6 group winners and 2 wild cards will advance to the knockout stage. The quarterfinals will be played on December 4th and December 5th, with the higher seed having home court advantage, and the 4 winners will advance to Las Vegas, where the semifinals will be played on December 7th, and the in-season tournament championship will be played on December 9th. The tournament night schedule will be released on Tuesday night, so tomorrow night, ESPN will reveal it on NBA Today at 3 p.m. So tomorrow evening, I should say. We're going to get a lot more clarification about exactly who's going to be playing, how this in-season tournament is going to work. I don't know exactly what every Tuesday and Friday necessarily means. I don't think they gave us really enough information to kind of go off of that, but we'll start to get some more information and we'll start to pass it along a little bit. It'll be interesting to see exactly how this is going to be put together. I'm not a huge fan of it. I like the traditional 82 game season. You play the full regular season and then you have your tournament is the playoffs. That's how every sport works. That's how every professional sport works. I think it's a little stupid. Like, I think that it's just really weird. And then you have 4 teams that advance to Las Vegas. I think a lot of teams are not going to take this very seriously either, because there might be some type of some bonus in money or something like that if you win the in-season tournament. But besides that, like, nobody's going to be taking this as seriously as the NBA Finals. Like, legacies are built in the NBA Finals. I don't think legacies are going to be built in the in-season tournament. I'm not a huge fan of this, but I'm interested to see what more information we're going to get from Adam Silver in the NBA this upcoming week. We'll get some teams that will be playing in the games. I hope we get a better understanding of what this is going to be. And if throughout November, we're only going to have NBA basketball on Tuesday and Friday nights, that's going to be really annoying if that's the case. And also exactly like what's going to happen too with the 82 game season. Is it going to be an 82 game season? I mean, you're doing an in-season tournament throughout the regular season. I guess the teams that get eliminated or something aren't on it continue their schedule. I'm not exactly sure. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm not they haven't released the full NBA schedule for this season yet. So until we get that, we really are just speculating at this point. I've been very confused about what exactly an in-season tournament means ever since Adam Silver first brought it up a couple of years ago, and then he implemented it for this season. So we'll see what happens. I'm very interested to see what kind of more information we get, and the way it's looking, I'm not in love with it. I'm not in love with it at all. So we'll definitely see what happens. But that's going to wrap things up for tonight's episode. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to Empty the Bench Podcast Network to check out another episode of the 3&D. You can check us out on all social media platforms at the 3&D ETB. And you can check out Empty the Bench at ETB Network. Once again, subscribe to us below. We just hit 500 subscribers, so keep it moving, everybody. We have huge thank you to everybody who tunes in every single week. You guys keep us going, and please keep liking, sharing us, and we'll be giving you more and more information as the weeks go on. And basketball season, summer's slightly coming to an end. I know that's sad, but that means the fall is coming and more basketball. So you diehard basketball fans, college season's right around the corner. The NBA season's right around the corner. And that means more 3&D is going to be getting more intense and right around the corner as well. So hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week for episode 11.